Thank you all for coming under this such a nice weather. I expected much warmer and nicer weather in Texas, but I think I brought this, so my apology for this from Boston. First of all, I really want to say this. I'm truly honored by your invitation to be here with all these other respected architects in the list of the speakers. And for that, I thank you, David Heyman, and then Dean Eddington, and Hope Hasbrook, who I believe who initiate all this process. I know Hope when I was in GSD, when I was a student 20 years ago. And Hope, even though she was not teaching my section, but still she is an unforgettable faculty member for me because she was youngest and smartest and prettiest. I think she was the only one who wears Ferragamo in the school. So thank you again for, thank you again for everything. So, because this is my first time in Austin and Texas, I did some research. This is actually the southernmost part of America I ever been. So I did some research. The word Texas is originated from a word meaning friends of indigenous people of America. Did you know that? Okay. And also there are Samsung semiconductor factory, which is probably Korean in Austin. And also, I knew this state is a huge one, but I didn't know it's bigger than France, which is the biggest country in Europe. And I heard I can taste the best pecan pie in America in Austin. So I did yesterday, so it was awesome. And I heard there are many donut shops owned and run by Korean immigrants here. So I heard that's why all these big brand name donut company are not doing well as they're doing in other states. So it was kind of fascinating background. And if I can introduce where I came from and then where most of PARKKIM's practice has been done, Seoul, Korea. So in 1953, which was right after the Korean War, the South Korea was literally the world's poorest country. And then now in 2018, I think South Korea is 14th richest country in the world. So you can imagine what kind of fluctuation in terms of economic development we've been through between 1953 until present. And then you can imagine what was the big shift that urban space had to go through. So between 1960 to 2000, Korea went from having an 80% rural population to an 80% urban population. And then in terms of the physicality of the Korean Peninsula, 70% of Korean Peninsula is mountainous. So it's not much inhabitable space we have in Korean Peninsula. And lastly, in terms of the population density, Seoul population density is 16,200 people per square kilometer, when for Texas it's only 35 people per square kilometer. So I think you were blessed. So how would this difference between, in terms of this physicality of context in which a landscape architect practices, make that practice different? And what do you mean by natural? Does it always have to do with something green? But Yoon-Jin and I didn't think so. So I think, can something very artificial looking actually yield the spatial experience that real nature can produce? So I guess that was how this concept of alternative nature really has been accumulated through the PARKKIM's practice for 14 years until now. And this is the book that Hope briefly introduced. And I brought some copy for you who are going to ask questions after the lecture. So stay. I know some of you have class like 6, so you can leave. I'm not going to be crying, but if you have questions, I'll be more than welcome to answer. So with all this kind of background knowledge about where I came from and then where my practice is, I'm gonna talk about like 15 projects in total. I think, 10 of them get built, mostly in Korea. And then 4 of them are defeated competition entries, but we are still very proud of. And then the final picture will be about the first American project that we just started. And then we just finished the schematic design for the project. And I also included some projects I never really showed in my previous lectures before. So there will be some new project that you cannot see from YouTube or anywhere else. So the order of presentation today, the order of the project that I'm going to present it's not by the project scale or the time it's been built. It's about, I'm going to show the most natural looking project and end up with least natural looking project. So you'll see the question of what is natural that we've been asking every time actually yield all different answers. So it depends on the budget and then budget and client's need and the site and everything. So I'll start with this book. So I'll start with the first project is Yanghwa Riverfront project. This project is mainly about to bring back the lost relationship between the water and mountain that we had like 50 or 60 years ago still in Seoul, and to make a park also functioning as a urban infrastructure as well as the recreational space. So this is like 2-kilometer long waterfront in the middle of Seoul. In Seoul, we have, and during summertime, we have really serious problem of inundation of the waterfront because the rain is really heavy. And whenever it flooded, the river is flooded, the water always bring that the mud, which is the silt, to the terrace. And then all of the waterfront, almost all parts of the waterfront in Seoul is 3 terraces condition. So it's low water level and mid water level and high water level. So the lower water level, which is almost like 3.5 meters from the sea level, is always inundated by water, and also after that is silt, covered with silt. So this is how it looked before the design is done. And then this is what happened. So the silt accumulated by the water had to be removed within a day. Otherwise, the silt is going to be kind of hardened like crust. So it's really hard to remove. So there are a lot of effort and money has been spending to manage that silt problem every summer. The manpower and then machine power and everything. So what we did was we kind of stretched the retaining wall area between the terraces and then make them kind of series of slope with all different inclination, so that when water flow back to the river, it can easily bring back the silt to the river, so that there are less silt will be accumulated after the flood. And I heard that the maintenance cost was really reduced after the river was redone. With all this slope and everything. So this is the diagram that we made when we had to convince the city government. So the contour plan of the slopes. So you see that where the contour is really dense was the existing retaining wall location. Then where the contours kind of spread it out is new slopes that we created. So this is a construction document to show what is all different condition of the new edge condition of the riverfront. And then these are the planting scheme. We have you see the division of the planting, that's where all the enlargement the documents are. And the construction photo. We literally plant the trees right at the edge. It's kind of planter condition. So we burlapped the tree root ball and then planted almost sticking into the planting area. And then covered with the metal net so that it won't be disturbed by the flood. And after completion, so what we wanted to do is not literal restoration of any lost landscape, but this is the landscape painting done by Jung-sun like 200 years ago. And then you can see the mountain was really directly meeting the river without any middle landscape. But so that, of course, we didn't have enough space to literally reveal the relationship. But then I think we were able to restore that relationship with the mountain really meeting the water directly, and then having people at the edge of the riverfront. Some photo after construction. So you'll see all these rampways are all ADA accessibility were met, which was not before. And then also that the pathway and ramps are the kind of the pathway also for the mud and water to go back to the river again. And stone edge. The same place when the water is in. And because of that landform, a sculpted water edge, you'll see that a consistently changing water edge condition depending on the fluctuating the water level. And then there are not many riverfront in Korea are populated by people during rain because now here the fishes are coming right at the edge, so people can fish. You see, there are still people during the inundation. And very wild water edge condition in the middle of the city. So the second project is to experiment if a park can be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter by creating the microclimate in the park. So this was a competition entry we didn't win, but we are very proud of. This is to make a park at the location where the power plant was before, which is being constructed underground right now because of all this complaint and then the things like that from the community. So this was competition to build a park above that underground power plant to be completed next year, I think. So because there was a thermal plant, our concept was thermal city, how to make this park kind of unique from that concept and notion of the thermal in the city. So the thermal city was our concept because this climate change is really giving us harsher summer, harsher winter every year. So we wanted to create a park with a warmer microclimate in the winter and then cooler in the summer. So we co-work with the Arab, their sustainability department. So they come up with this thermal sensation index. So if we input the sun and the wind and temperature of certain spot, they can calculate the thermal comfort index range from 0 to 7. And then about 4 is supposed to be the most comfortable index for outdoor space. So we design landform first, and then we give the landform to Arab, and they calculate all this index, and then we revise our landform to achieve that goal. So back and forth process. So this is a kind of design landform with a prevailing wind direction, which was southwest to northeast. So during the summer, the in-between spaces of the landform will act as a wind corridor so that you can expedite the wind velocity and then create hopefully to create the cooler weather. But then in winter, the wind direction is perpendicular to the landform, so it will block the wind, and then it will create the sunny side to the southern part. So you can see very clearly that before, the left-hand side is the site without the landform, and then the right-hand side is after we designed the landform. So you will see that blue spot, which only the periphery of the building had before. You have the blue spot in the middle of the empty lot. So that's supposed to be a cooler spot in the summer. And then again, this is winter, January, 3 p.m. or something. And then you will see that warmer is not like 4 level, but then it's obviously warmer than other blue spot in the winter because it's just doing something opposite that it's doing in the summer. And also in terms of section, We incorporate this landform also with the ventilation system and then emergency exit from the downstairs, the below ground at the power plant. So that you can see the landform is not just for the upper level microclimate, but it's also integrating the landscape for also for the below ground. Some detail we designed for the lighting and everything. And the winter scene under the snow. And the summer. The perspective view. And next two projects are also the competition entries that we didn't win. But both of them, we led as a landscape architects the whole interdisciplinary design process with structural engineer and then architects to evoke the alternative nature experience in a very urban spot. So the first project is Bridge of Aquifer, we named. It was competition last year we did, Ecological Bridge competition, and we won the fourth prize, the fourth prize award. So this was the very famous Eco Bridge project by NBVA. Very nice project and very wide enough, the width that can actually seduce animal to pass by. But then this was a competition brief. It only gave us 10-meter width to work with, and then 100-meter length, the span of the ecological bridge. But if you're an animal, it's really hard to enter a space which is only like 10-meter width and thinking this is real nature. So for us, how can we do this? So for us, because we don't have enough width of the bridge, we decide to plant as many trees as possible, and then as diverse environment as possible we can create. So like a wetland and everything. But for that, we really had to have the deep enough soil depth, and that will need a very heavy the supporting structure underneath. So we created. So creating the lightest structure possible was not our main goal. Our main goal was creating as deep soil depth as possible. So this was a conceptual sketch Yoon-Jin did at the very beginning of the design process. And then we kind of wanted to separate these two parts of the bridge. So the top part is for the animal passage, and then the below part is arch structure, which is really robust enough, and also it functions as a kind of gateway to the Seoul because the bridge is located at the very southern border of Seoul. So two different structural concepts. So the kind of twisting that structure so that it can be more, it can be stronger was our initial concept of the structure. Then this was the final proposal. So, so that arch structure is kind of functioning as a gateway to the Seoul as well, and then robust enough to support that heavy soil weight. And then, because there's so much of water will be observed by the top part of the bridge, the below we designed as an aquifer so that it can hold the water and then slowly drain into the highway. So that it kind of delay the water flow from the bridge, and also it can hold the water when it's dry season. So that's why we call it bridge of aquifer. And then the below diagram is the one we communicate with the structural engineer with the initial scheme. So the plan of the ecological bridge. This is the human passage right next to the main bridge structure. So the human here is very secondary consideration for us because it's ecological bridge. And then there are also level difference between the human passage and the animal passage. There's some structural beauty of the arch structure and the birds that we can seduce in that area. You see that the black section is the existing mountain section, and then you can see that bridge is really connecting the cut of that mountain. And then we somehow want to revoke that lost topography by that the highway underneath. And then Forest of Lights. This is for Catholic Martyrs Memorial in Korea. And, I'm sorry. So this is not meant to be landscape competition. This was architectural competition. So the program was really heavily to build the cathedral in the middle of the Seoul, and then also exhibition space for the Catholic mothers, and then yeah. So it was meant to be architectural competition with very heavy architectural program. Then what we did was you see this very condensed urban condition. And then we thought that it would be really valid to make an empty ground and then make all the program underneath. And then somehow we can make a landform that can communicate with underneath the architectural program. So that, because in Korea also we have all different religions, then if we build something too obviously Catholic in the middle of the city, maybe it's not really universally received by other religion people. So we wanted to make a very kind of humble in the overground as a certain memorial, and then all the architectural program underneath. So that was the plan. So we shaped kind of the ground memorial with that the planting, and then all of this architectural program with that underneath of that red dots. So that's the red dot kind of lightings projected from the ground, from the below ground to the ground. I'll show you in the section. And then this another smaller red is the 100 years old, the oldest cathedral we have in Seoul. So we kind of have that relationship, the same axis with that cathedral and then the church and then the new memorial. And because the site is already have underground parking structure, we wanted to reuse the parking structure as much as we can. So all the gray area is the section that we are using as they are. And then we only changed that slab of the top part of the parking. So that slab is like a dome, an arch structure. And then you see that the one very high ceiling, only there we demolished the parking structure and then making 40 meter height the church, the church area, the main church area. So this is the kind of the where the main cathedral is, and then with the landform, so the arch structure is also the landform underground, and then we have this porosity that projects lighting from the sky, and then in the nighttime, it will project the lighting from the ground to upper level. And this is how the landform is shown in the ground. So it's really this one surface, and then it also serves the underground and then above the ground. Nighttime, and then plan. And we also designed the architectural scheme as well. The exhibition space. So those columns are from the parking structure. So the next project is to build a park system in a new city called Gyeonggi, only like 5-minute drive from Seoul. And this is because in Korea, 70% of Korean peninsula is mountainous. Many parks are assigned to mountain area because we want to build as much as possible in the flat area. So this one in Gyeonggi is new city, which is completed 2013. 12 of 13 urban parks were assigned to the mountain area. So it's not really a park, because for me, a park is like Central Park. You need to be able to go there during your lunchtime with your high heel, not with hiking boots or anything, right? But that's the urban park for me. So what we did here is to create with less than 8% inclination path system to all 13 parks, so that the person in a wheelchair or a woman in a high heel can go up to the mountain park during their lunchtime, so that it really functions as a urban park. So the title here is that climbing up to the top of the mountain on my high heel. Because, you know, woman in high heel is like a person in a wheelchair. It's the same thing in the mountain, right? So this one, we won the competition. And then the park system got built. And I was design commissioner for the park project. So now the city is completed. And then this kind of 3 different kind of pedestrian path system in the mountain. So one is below 8% inclination. And then 8 to 20% inclination, and then more than 20% inclination for the professional climber. And then this is kind of, they say, Central Park of Gyeonggi. So that's why we designed the 2 big lawn at the end of 2 park, so that it is also the concept of that 8% pedestrian pathway to the top, but then it still has that 2 big lawn at the end, so they can be more civic. So capture from Instagram of that Gyeonggi citizen that they really enjoy this waterway and then the vastness of the lawn that they cannot really enjoy from the mountain park. Okay, this is the CJ Blossom Park. This is, you know, the CJ, the one of the Korean conglomerate company who is the kind of big company in terms of a K-pop culture. And they also have many other industries that they have been doing, rice production and chemical and the medicine and so forth. So they built this laboratory, the kind of complex in one city, which is also happened to be the Gyeonggi, same city. And then because compared to those American institutions with a big campus, we only have very little the land to work with because it's in the middle of the Gyeonggi city. So the main point we tried here is to provide researcher naturalistic condition where they can take a break and then also to be inspired by that environment. But how are we going to make it? We did it through the layers of different landform and also the reflection quality of the water body through a very artificial way of doing it. So this is where it's located. It's really hard to see from here, but then you see that white solid line, that's the site area. And then the kind of blackish area is one of that mountain park that we designed just before the 8% park. So it really adjacent to that parkland, and that's the site for the research institute. And this is the building. I think the Canon architects designed the building. Yes, Danny Studio. And then we designed the landscape. So our main concept was to bring the landforms inspired by all the mountains surrounding the city, and then make the researcher kind of detour between the landform so that it will take some more time to walk around, but then it will give them at least like 30 minutes of break during their routine life. You'll see that landforms at the front, the street side, and then in another part, the right-hand side, it is neighboring that park. Usually in Korea, I'll show you. Oh, it's coming. I'm sorry. I'll explain this earlier. Okay, so all these landforms. So I said from the entrance, they're supposed to not making a shortcut, but supposed to kind of detour between the landform. So kind of layering of these different mountains and hills. And this is the rooftop garden that we designed. It looks like this with all this white blade. And that actually inspired a lot from that architectural louver. And it looks like it's flowing down to the rooftop. And then as you see the horizontal lines there, they're all the wooden blade that we designed. And then it also holds the soils because it's very, it needs to be very light in terms of the weight because it's a roof structure. And then we mix a lot of the artificial soil. That means the soil is really weak. So we need to have some supporting system within the soil. So that wooden blade is not just for sculptural experience, but also to support that filled soil. So you see that they have all these different modules and undulation. So this is just part of the construction drawing that really elaborate the size and dimension and everything of that all different module. And this is that slope condition I wanted to explain because the 70% of Korean Peninsula is mountainous. And we also want to secure as much flatland as possible. At the edge of the site, we many times have to deal with this slope condition that all the mountain is cut and then pushed back as much as possible to the boundary so that the civil engineer comes and then they design this horrible, horrible slopes, which is not necessarily really great to look at when it's done. So what we did is that we convinced the client and the city government, both of them, to give up some of their property. Then we can make the slope gentler, and then we were able to do something more beautiful than the civil engineering, the slope, so that you can see all the section lines. So we designed all the section, and then we came up with some more creative solutions. So we sometimes need to fill the slope, and sometimes we have to cut the slope. And these are all different sections that we made for the construction and also for the meetings between these two parties. So then here again, because we have to fill that slope, the steeper slope toward the gentler slope, and then also this is a major slope at the edge of the park. So the sliding protection was the really big issue for the government. So what we did was we made this supporting structure, which is also has very good sculptural value. So it looks like this. So when it's raining, it turns out to be like cascade almost, because the water will be flowing down from the mountain top to the below area. And then without this, maybe it would be easier that it will have the landslide without this supporting structure. But now then also in terms of the visual quality, is much better to look at than the civil engineering slope. So for that, we make a random model and then make all these blades all specified with like 20 sheets of construction documents. And then some of them we had to cut, literally cut, to maintain the same spatial quality from the construction documents in the construction site. And then people were sitting there when it's not raining. And the other side of the slope with bigger stand, because the below is a playground. This is the water reflection, because in Korea we have really severe winter. All the water needs to be drained during the winter, but then all the water feature we are designing has really big problem, because then it's ugly, right? All the nodules and pools. So here, those modules are from the CJ, the company logo. So the logo is like 3 petals kind of combined together. So starting from that logo, we create the reflection pond that can be reflected even without water during the winter. But then the client wanted reflection pond, but we only were given like 40 centimeter depth to deal with until the slab. 40 centimeters is less than 1.5 feet. So then what can we do? It's really shallow to hold like much depth to create a reflection effect. But then, so what we came up with is that this module, the metal frame that contained that stone module, so that both metal frame and then stone module can both be reflected. So they're kind of double reflection. So that even with a very shallow layer of the water, the reflection quality will be as good as the deep water body. So this is when the water is drained. And when the water is filled, you can see it's very shallow. and the scene from the lobby. It's a reflective function of reflection pond. And I want to just show this slide quickly because you see the ventilation and then dry area structure that also we proposed the conceptual design with association with the landform, so that the whole landscape can be read as a one piece. And some furniture design we did for the roof gardens, detail. And again, the layers of landform that we wanted people to walk around in between them. Okay, so this is the volleyball team training center of Hyundai company. Hyundai is the car company, it's the same name, but a family company. So with this, we designed a very grand cascade that is juxtaposed with a kind of square-shaped architecture. It's not square inside, but from outside it's really perfect square. And then we wanted to create a landscape which is as grand as the architecture, but it looks very tranquil and quiet from the beginning, but then it yielded really a grand roaring sound when you approach to the cascade. So the cascade was made out of that expanded metal. The client was a really good client, has very strong and good tastes, but then the budget was really short because the landscape project, we really get involved very at the end of the project. So we had to do something within very tight budget. And we decided to use that leftover material from the building facade. So that's what architect used for the building facade, which is expanded metal. And then we used it to create the cascade. So that's how it looked. So there was some level change, grade change in the site. So we almost like just peel out of that surface and then make that 3 steps of cascade to just fit into that landscape. And also this is kind of the ripple effect by the expanded metal that we can see from the real natural condition. And by putting that pedestrian bridge, the cascade is not only to look at, but also to experience. So when you really cross that bridge, you can really emerge into that big sound of that water and then that ripple effect by the sun. It's very narrow bridges, only like 45 centimeters wide, only 1.5 feet. So some construction document we did for the bridge. Close up. And I brought some movie that give you the sound of the water. So it looked quite tranquil and peaceful from the picture, but the sound is really roaring sound. Okay. Next one. Okay. Some more pictures. Also the mounding was created to give some identity to the site because the site is really located in the middle of nowhere. So the landform creating that periphery condition. Okay, so this is the project I'll quickly go through of SBS. This is the Korean Broadcasting Company. And then we are given very linear and north side facing strip to work with. So what we did was we used that metal aluminum the deck material to give the reflection toward the lobby, which is also very dark. And then also you can work as a drainage system because it's the porosity of the aluminum decking. So this is how we did with the waterway and then some planters kind of delineated by the aluminum edging. So when the shrub is withering in the winter, it still creates that spatial quality with the metal edging. So how we work with the interior space also with the model. And you can see 3 of the planters really look like it's going into the curtain wall. But then in reality, these 2 planters are totally different system. So the plants planted outside is really planted into the soil, then also water drained into the soil, but then the planted in the indoor is like pot condition, so it will be drained into architectural drain. But then the clients are really doing a good job with maintaining the top part the same height, so they can look, it looks like as if they are one planting. So we wanted to import that deck material from America, but we didn't have really time. And then we found the cruise ship interior company in Ulsan, the remote part of Korea. And then we worked with them to actually make this aluminum deck system for the first time in Korea. So because we didn't really have time to try and error, we measured the space, the real space we have in between the existing site and the building, and then we assemble everything in the factory, and then we just reassemble in the site so that we don't have to have this trial and error, luxury of trial and error. With lighting in the nighttime. And then the lobby doesn't really need artificial lighting because of the reflection of that aluminum decking. So clients really like that the landscape actually saves the energy. Because it's a broadcasting company, they wanted to have this media art in the wall, and then some green wall with the media wall. But then it's really hard to maintain green wall in Korea because of the harsh condition of the winter. So what we did was we make these planters, individual planters with the super mirror cladding, so that even if there's no plants, I mean, even if the plants is withering in the winter, it will still kind of maintain the higher quality of the visuality during the winter. And also the cladding with the 7 different angles, so that it gives you different reflection effect. The courtyard on 10th floor, so this is a paving we did with a limited budget. That we cut the square stainless steel pipe, and then we put them on top of the mound, and then pour the black concrete. And then after they all dried out, we kind of grind them to make the shiny effect of the steel edge. So it's a lot cheaper than granite paving, but then a lot more effective and unique. So clients love this paving detail. Reflection pond, the entrance. And I'll show you 2 different shade projects. So this one is for the Air Busan, one of the low-cost carrier company in Korea, empty garden. So the first part of the project is the ground level garden. And then the second part is the rooftop, the shading structure. So these are kind of corridor between 2 different buildings. And then we wanted to give that kind of not parallel sight line to work with, so that it looks something like, it really inspire people that this is kind of in the way to the airport, and then the fly line of the aircraft. Then and then the paving module that we make with the tree grading. But then this is the main thing I wanted to share with you, the shade structure. What we try to do here is, in real nature, the tree canopy really give you transparency of the shadow. It's not really opaque shadow, right? But then between the leaves, you can still enjoy the wind and then some sunshine, so that it's really pleasant because it's transparent. So what we try to do here is kind of that transparency through the shade structure. So, and also we didn't really expect very high level of maintenance. So we only plant the plants at the very edge of the courtyard so that they only need to maintain very small portion of the garden. So that's why we call it empty garden. And then we play with all this shadow with that structure. We also designed the structure, and we also, this is design-build project, so we also were in charge of the building. And I love that contrast to that surrounding mountain. Yeah, so he's maintaining that edge, only edge for the planting. The shadow. And then whenever they have some kind of event or big gathering, we also designed for them the portable, removable furniture. Should be at the end. Like this. So with the kind of same color scheme with the structure. And then because it's Busan, which is a really warmer area of Korea, there's no snow. So that's why we were able to do this very light structure, because it doesn't need to support all the weight of the snow and everything. Another very short project. This is kind of opposite. The pavilion is supposed to be for the smokers. So it needs to be opaque, not to disturb other people passing by. But then the main question was how to build the structure without any leg or supporting thing, so that it's really opaque in one side. But then how does it ventilate the air between them, so that we kind of locate them in the wind corridor from two mountains where the building located. Yeah, so we designed a structure without any leg, with one triangle module. And then they are located in the wind corridor. Smokers. For some company in Korea, they kind of prohibit any smoking activity, even inside or outside, but this company is still generous, so that they even built a pavilion for smokers. Okay, the subtitle is wrong. This is for the Gyeonggi Provincial Office Plaza. I have 2 more projects to go. So, in Korea, we didn't really have historical a culture of plaza, because I think the plaza is also part of the Christianity, right? In Korea, it's more about like street culture. So we had market along the street. Then we also have this very strong access from palace, which was street. And then the people were gathered for market and activity and things like that. So whenever we design plaza, and whenever we go to the public hearing, they always ask where's the trees and where's the shade and everything. So that's kind of, people want program of park to plaza. So we are questioning what is plaza and what is park. But we cannot really, we actually don't want to push too much that plaza need to be empty. Because in Korea we also have very severe summer that people need a shadow in summer. So we kind of make a design plaza that is also can be functioning as a park, meaning there are canopy, and then because the trees are all high canopy, all kind of civic activities will be possible underneath the canopy, just all year. But then what we did was that the center road is the what existed before, but then the government decided to reroute the road, and then now that the remnants of the road is only for the inside plaza usage. And then in the center we have the lawn, but then the shape is not important because the shape is really the leftover by those hard paving area that we designed, inspired by the contour line that does not exist anymore because of the urban development. So the paving pattern is something that we really elaborated with the construction document and everything, and the plaza will be completed next month. So I got some site photo from Yoon-Jin last night. He went to the site. So this is kind of the construction document that we made. So this is number 74 construction document. I think we have like some 300 or something. But then the pattern looks really irregular, but it's not totally irregular. We made kind of we did some modulation of, we create some rule so that they can have this numbering. And then a person who are charged of number 3, he only do number 3, so that they don't kind of confuse each other's pattern. So this is me, because the module is really linear. People were so worried that it will be broken so soon. So I went to the site. And I bring all the construction truck to run over the mock-up area, and it was totally fine. So that's why we were able to push the design to the construction. So this is a photo from yesterday. So you see that juxtaposition between the plaza, the contour pattern, and then the mountain. And then, because there is a level change between the main entrance area and the plaza, we designed the kind of steps, but it's not like traditional step. They can be used as a kind of stand for any events in the plaza. And also it can be used as a steps. And at the entrance, there's big level change, so we had to put stairs. This is how it looks in the construction. He's working on I think pulling out the electrical pipe and code. And you'll see with the human scale, there are enough space for civic activity underneath the canopy. So it's heavily planted, but it's still plaza. Okay, so another paving project. So in Korea, in public space, we only use almost 2 kinds. One, very cheap paving block, which has some level of porosity. And second, if they have more budget, the granite stone. But then this was the kind of the public street that we are designing, the pedestrian path 2 years ago. Budget was really limited, and then we were supposed to design the paths. But then without changing the material, we cannot really change the design, right? With all this cheap paving material, but then there's no budget to use the granite paver. So this was actually the first time that PC concrete paver was introduced in the public path in Seoul. So we designed 2 different types of concrete paver, PC concrete paver. That is actually, that can be triangularized into 9 pieces of triangle, so that when the path is not level, we can use the smaller triangle module so that it can fit that not level ground. But then if it's flat, we can use that whole one module of the PC concrete paver. And then the thickness is 12 centimeter thick. It's very thick and still much cheaper than granite paver. It's a mock-up. But then we had to go through all this testing. Otherwise, the government wouldn't let me use this new material because they're so worrying about new material to public space, all the safety issue and everything. So after that, this is also the construction document we made, because there has to be, you need to work with the existing curve and the existing rail blocks and everything. We kind of make this construction document where to cut and then which module need to be used between this full module and then triangle module. And then this red line is where it needs to be sloped. And then you can see the mixture of triangle module and then full module, but then you still create that whole one picture of pattern. and then how we work with the existing braille blocks. And then also at the edge, we incorporate with the rain garden, which is a drainage for the city. And then we make the simulation of how that triangle module works with that unlevel surface. This is the drawing, and then this is how it built. It's very comfortable for the carrier, for the Chinese traveler, because that street is really populated by Chinese traveler every day. Me in the site supervision, because sometimes the construction people don't really look at the drawing. So I go to the site and then really, please read the document and everything. And then tree grading also was customized by our design. And I think it's really well received by the people. They don't really tell if it's PC concrete or if it's granite, for sure, because they're laymen. But somehow they feel the texture and then the perception from their feet is different from other paving. And also the high heel is not stuck anymore between the edge. So you see how the triangle module meets the full module, and how that street kind of start to communicate with the program. I think that sticker is coming after this renovation of the path. And this is a photo of my friend. She is also a design professor for the product design. And then she sent me this photo saying, "Isn't this street that you designed?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I was walking around the street and then it feels a little different. And it feels like my feet is kind of accepted by the road." It was really, it observes all the other, how can I say, the power from all the stuffs. And then it was really smooth to walk on. And then she said she realized this is something actually designed. And it was by your firm. That's what she said. And she sent me the photo. So this is kind of joy that I can enjoy as a landscape architect when I design the public space. Okay, I think this is the last, second to last project. This is the project we also lost, the competition entry. The station with the glass dome in the ceiling. But then we're supposed to do something in the space with that kind of in association with that dome structure. And we are invited by three other internationally renowned artists. What we did was we did a second dome below the original glass dome. And then that steel leaf module were welded to each other to make a new dome structure. So that if you are standing in the atrium, the sunshine will be projected through that leaf, the gaps of the leaf. And then we want to create that experience as if you are underneath the real tree. So that the shape of light will be really shaped by that, the in-between spaces between the steel leaves. So that's a simulation that we made. And the relationship with the existing glass dome. So last project, the one I mentioned, the least natural looking project, because we were not able to plant any tree. So we only designed the paving and then street furniture. And then the main, one of the main requests from the client from the beginning is that because it's shopping mall, the landscape needs to be Instagrammable. So with a hashtag, it needs to be appearing more frequently than its competitor, which is the adjacent neighboring shopping mall. And then again, the only thing we were able to do is a paving, the paving thing. Then between the granite paper or the trim material, I mean, we didn't want to choose between two. So what we did is we used the black and white ceramic tile they're meant to be used for the outdoor space, so which is not slippery or anything. So the site is 570 meter long, very long shopping mall. And then it's funny, the first owner of the shopping mall was bankrupt but during the construction period. So the site was kind of stopped during very anonymous process of construction. So we were given very oddly shaped ground level that doesn't really have any kind of soil depth. So that's why we were not able to plant any tree. So that we had to work, and also because of the limited budget and time, we were not able to make any modification of the substructure. So we had to work with that oddly shaped structure. So, and also this one, this is how we inspired by the fractal structure of the tree. So we made one paving pattern, and then we kind of make evolution from that one paving pattern, kind of divided from that original paving pattern. So we make 4 different plaza area within the shopping mall. So we almost define that plaza area with different paving pattern. So this was main entrance with the black and white tiles. And then where that super mirror, the furnitures are, is the one with the very oddly shaped this declination in the site. And by that super mirror cladding, is now even more Instagrammable. And also it makes the site look even bigger. And goes very well with the H&M and Zara, I think. Because the neighboring shopping mall used the granite paper because they wanted to do it nicer. Right. So this is the simulation we made. And then this is how it built. It's near the Incheon airport, so if you visit Korea, it's really close by. You see the different smaller scale of paving pattern for the threshold. Okay, so this is the first PARKKIM project in America. We just started near Chicago, but this is the existing site, so it's already beautiful as it is. So this is sanctuary for a Korean Buddhist temple, and we are invited for the landscape design. And so the main challenge of this project is how to reinterpret the Korean Buddhist concept of nature to this flat Midwest landscape. So we just finished the schematic design, and now I think it's going through the approval. That's why I was not able to show the design here. But then we just started Project America, so let me know if any opportunity comes. Okay, so thank you very much. So. I open up for questions and book giving. Yeah.
I have a question. Back to your very first project you presented, how much do you think the entirety of Seoul will be inundated with water based off the predictions of climate change? Because some of the most dire predictions suggest that the water level will rise a lot.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
How much do you think Seoul, Korea, that's where this is, will be inundated with water due to climate change? Because I've heard predictions of high water level rising. Has that been shown?
Right, very, very good question. I think that's why we kind of wanted to solve it with a topographical modification rather than raising the height of the dike. Because before, the main function of the waterfront was prevent the flood. So it's really functioning as a dike system. That's why they made these 3 very distinct terraces by concrete terraces. But then that was meant to be 200-year flood protection. But as you said, because of the climate change, you never really know if the 200-year flood will come every year, right? But then only thing we can possibly think about before was raising up the height of the dike. Then I think the question is, what is the quality of the waterfront as a recreational space and as a kind of public space in the city? So that's why we kind of make this different levels of the landform that can actually accommodate that flood. Because as you said, the level change already fixed from the river, and then the city level is like more than 500 flood. It's like more than 12 meter different. So within that, we believe that we have freedom to work with, so that they don't have to be like severely terraced anymore, because we already secured that level difference by the already fixed urban infrastructure. So within that, we kind of accommodated with the modification of the landform that can be also good when we have 200-year flood, so that the high level of the riverfront can be still used for the fishermen during the flood. Did it answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
Like you mentioned before, Korean culture is more about streets and squares. We have those differences from other countries. So like when we use a landscape, I think we have differences too. As Korean summer is too hot to be outside, and Korean winter is too cold to be outside. So we usually say we only have 2 months to enjoy the outside landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know that, was there any differences when you're designing Korean park and American park?
Are you American or are you Korean?
I am Korean.
Oh, you're Korean, okay.
Yes.
Well, that I can answer after I design park in America. So give me the commission first. But yeah, it was, but I think it's really hard to predict the climate change. I mean, it's global warming, but that doesn't mean we have warmer winter, right? So I think this is a challenge that all landscape architects have to deal with, that the time that we can enjoy the outdoor space is getting really shorter and shorter. So that's why, that's how we came up with this creating microclimate, the power plant park, so that we kind of wanted to elongate the period that we can enjoy the outdoor space. So yeah, I can answer your question after I do any park in America. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're.
So I noticed that sometimes you used some organic forms and sometimes some like geometric. And I was wondering why you made the difference in choosing to make like an alternate nature. Like why sometimes you chose to be more organic rather than geometric.
Yeah. Very interesting question. How can I answer? I think first of all, the term organic or naturalistic is really not one fixed term. When I ask the same question to my Dutch friend, he said, for Dutch people, organic means straight lines. Because for Dutch, they always need to create all the waterways and everything, totally engineered. So that means for him, organic means straight lines, which really makes sense. And then for me, as a Korean, I mean, organic means like curvilinear thing before. But after I work at Netherlands and studied America, that differentiation between being organic, being straight, being curvilinear, being naturalistic really became not clear anymore. So I think that's how we came up with this term of alternative nature during the practice. So even if it looked really artificial or with straight lines and everything, it can yield that experience of nature that real nature used to be yielding. So for me, it's not really about style matter, but then I think I can say that's the kind of response to each different site condition, and also site condition including the aesthetics of architecture, and also aesthetics of client, and the physical condition of the site. So I think as a response, response to that, we came up with sometimes straight lines and sometimes curvilinear lines. I think that's my answer. Yeah.
For the granite topography one, how large scale is that, and do you think that the Korean government is going to start implementing that in other public?
Oh, you mean the granite paver? No, the PC concrete. PC concrete.
The one where your friend was staying.
Right. So that was not granite, but there was PC concrete module. Yeah, granite walking. So why we titled it granite walking is we wanted to provoke the experience, the nice walking experience is not just by granite paver, but we can do it with PC concrete paver. That's why the title was a little confusing, maybe. So what did you say? What was?
Is that going to be your concept continuously used or or how, what's the concept?
Oh, yeah, good question. I don't know. I mean, it was just so hard to realize the project. I mean, because in Korea, the prejudice about concrete is not something about like Taiwan concrete. It's really, if we think about concrete, it's just cheap material with bad finish. So it was really hard to convince client that we can do something really nice with concrete. And then during the meeting, we did like 2 meetings every week for like 3 months. And then one of the advisors of the government saying, designer need to have like signed like memorandum saying if there anything a defect from the paper, designer need to be responsible, not the construction company, because we are the one who brought the idea. So that is the kind of level of defensiveness of the government, try not to use any new material for the public space. But then I revisit the pathway during the summer, and it's doing really well. Not many broken pavers, and still it feels really nice. So hopefully, governments kind of accepted by now that the PC concrete paver is something that they want to go for, because the porosity that they want to have will be gone after 6 months because of that dirty street water in Seoul. All the dirt and soil will be clogging the pores of the porous ecological block. So they already know that it's not really effective way of realizing ecology-friendly paving. But then still, it will take some time for public domain to accept that new reality. But then, as you said, I wish they can use more of those new material. Yes?
I was curious to know, from the Wall Street shopping mall, what was your design process in taking inspiration from the rooftop gardens and then arriving at the final?
Oh, okay. I think, the pattern design can go just crazy, right? There's no one answer. But then we had this certain very limited budget and time, and also this condition of the commercial space with very distinct goal, which is having more customer than other shopping mall, neighboring shopping mall. So for us, it's really the process of convincing the client and then show him that this will be working very well. So this is just not one alternative that we made. We made like tons of alternatives, and then throughout the meetings, and then the client picked like 3 or 5 alternatives, and then we make a mock-up in front of him, and then he went up to the top of like 30-story building and then looked down the site to see if that looked okay from other buildings as well, because it's not just for the street view, but also from the view from the other skyscraper in Songdo. So we went through all these different process of convincing and designing and updating our design. And also we experimented with all different material, not just ceramic tile, but we also tried with the real stone and concrete pavers and chip pavers and bricks and some antique used the bricks from China. So after all that, this was the conclusion. So it was not just like making art out of my fingertip. It was really a logical process of selection with multiple layers of selection.
I wonder, were you asking if it was algorithmically derived or using grasshopper or something like that? Is that what?
Actually, I was
Ah.
wondering a little bit about, like, was there like an underlying ordering system to this design?
Not for this project. We had some project with grasshopper and everything, but not this project. Because we had to work with the pre-made module that they can just buy from factory, so that it doesn't have to be customized for the budget issue. So we didn't really have luxury of experimenting all these different options with grasshopper and everything. But we do use grasshopper for other projects. Yeah.
So this is in Songdo City.
Yes, Songdo.
So I remember when Songdo City was first proposed.
Uh-huh.
And the proposal was that it was going to be the greenest city in the world.
Mm-hmm,
It was about the same time that Masdar in the Emirates was being planned, but this was going to be the uber, green city in the world. Sort of the demonstration of a model to the rest of the world of what it was like to be environmentally sustainable, low energy, and things like that. Now that it's shopping malls, was there any sort of, did you see while you were working there any kind of interest in carrying towards certain types of environmental ideals?
Right. That is very critical question about this propaganda and everything. I mean, basically, the Songdo is the reclamation land, so it's really artificial soil. So literally, 100% of soil of Songdo is artificial soil. So it's not like natural ground. But then, because it's the reclaimed land, the soil is really salty. So it's really hard to plant any big tree and then expect them to grow like crazy. So that's the given condition. But I'm not sure at the beginning of the city planning if the specialists were all kind of knowing the fact and lying. I don't know. Or if they're just not very knowledgeable about all this condition. But they did have this certain limit of height of the street tree, that it has to be a certain height for the street tree, so that we were not able to plant smaller tree at the beginning and then let them grow as time goes. But then there's a certain limit of height, I can remember. But then very small number of species we could choose from, because the wind is also very salty wind. So not many trees were meant to be survived with all this harsh condition. So only like one or two kind of tree is now planted in the street of Songdo. But then, yeah, it's quite sad propaganda. But sorry. Yes.
Okay, two more, that's it. Okay.
Quick. When you brought the panels, the blades of wood installed into the hillside,
Right.
was the material choice of wood because of budget constraints? And if not, what do you think the lifespan is of that material within the soil?
Right, very good question. We actually wanted to do at the beginning stone, because stone is, it's not going to be rotten and everything. But then the weight was really a problem, because it was filled hill. Then if we use a stone blade, it was just too heavy, so that it would actually even expedite the landslide. So that's why we use the wooden blade. But we treated all kind of surface treatment for to delay that rotting process. But then, all kind of material we use in the landscape will be rotten and then will be demolished sometime. So there's certain level of maintenance will be needed, but we expected that because it's private company's property and they're willing to do that. So yeah, that's why we choose the wood. Thank you. There's one more. Yeah.
In the first project, the Riverside project, you showed a painting. It was a traditional painting.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm curious how much you look to tradition and Korean culture for your designs and how that differs maybe from American.
Oh, yeah. Very good question. I would say I was not really interested in Korean culture, frankly. Because, as a young generation, I didn't think it's cool enough. But then after my 10 years of living abroad in America and Netherlands, I went back to Korea, and then I kind of was able to look at my culture with different eyes, kind of foreigner's eye. And then I start to realize there's so many things that I can rediscover and then reinterpret it from my own culture. So that, let's say this riverfront doesn't really look like Korean traditional garden at all. But then I'm still being inspired by this traditional painting in terms of the kind of very, very basic structure of the space and the very basic relationship between mountain and river. Even if I don't really recreate what's lost there, but then I still always refer to the traditional painting and traditional way of appreciating the nature. So without really making that very contained garden, our ancestors believed to stroll the mountain and river with the lunchbox and picnic mats. So that, because, mountains are everywhere, that means waters are everywhere too. So our ancestors were not necessarily having private garden in front of their yard because there are mountains and rivers everywhere. So that's also where I got inspired when we were designing that Gyeonggi park system, that providing people to climb up and stroll during their lunchtime, even if they're on their high hill, is also, for me, part of reinterpretation of the Korean culture. So, thank you very much.